Welcome back, brave souls, to Dark Tales, where nightmares come alive. Tonight's story is unlike anything you've seen before. Prepare yourselves because what you're about to witness will chill you to the bone. Stay close, if you dare. In a remote village deep in the woods stood an abandoned, decaying mansion. The locals whispered about it, but never dared to enter, for it was said to be cursed, haunted by jinn since the night its wealthy owners vanished without a trace. No bodies were ever found, only blood smeared across the walls and an echo of screams that seemed to live within the halls. One night, three friends decided to challenge the legend. Laughing nervously, they forced open the rusty gate and stepped inside. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang, locking them in. The air reeked of rot, like something long dead was still festering there. Above their heads came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. Though when they looked, there was nothing. They crept down a long, dusty corridor until they stopped at a massive portrait hanging on the wall. The painting was of a man with strange, hollow eyes that seemed to follow their every move. One of the friends touched the frame, and suddenly the figure inside the painting grinned, a twisted, terrifying smile. At that moment, doors all around them slammed open and shut, while faint female laughter echoed from the shadows. They panicked and ran, but one of them tripped. As he screamed, something black and clawed shot out from the floor, gripping his leg and dragging him down into the darkness beneath the wooden boards. His friends watched helplessly as he vanished, leaving nothing behind but the fading echo of his cries. Terrified, the remaining two stumbled into a grand hall lit only by flickering candles that moved as if breathing. At the center sat a man in ancient clothes, his eyes glowing red, his teeth sharp like fangs. His voice was deep and inhuman. "You have entered my house, and you will never leave alive." Suddenly, shadows peeled themselves from the walls, surrounding the two survivors, wrapping around their throats. One of them desperately tried to recite verses from the Quran, his voice trembling. The mansion shook violently, every candle snuffed out at once, plunging everything into a suffocating black silence. The next morning, the villagers noticed the friends had not returned. Gathering their courage, a few entered the mansion. Inside, they found only darkness, silence, and a torn backpack smeared with fresh blood near the entrance. Of the three friends, there was no trace. Yet every night since, screams are still said to echo through the haunted mansion, reminders of those who dared to enter and never came back. In a forgotten town at the edge of a dense forest stood an abandoned asylum, its walls cracked and windows shattered. Locals avoided it at all costs, whispering stories of screams that echoed at night and shadows moving behind broken glass. They said no one who entered ever returned the same, or at all. One stormy evening, a young man named Ethan, driven by curiosity and daredevil courage, decided to explore the asylum alone. As he stepped inside, the air grew icy, and the faint smell of decay filled his lungs. Every step echoed through the empty halls like a warning. Doors slammed shut on their own, and the faint sound of laughter, a hollow, twisted laughter, followed him from room to room. Ethan climbed the main staircase, which creaked with every step, and reached a long corridor lined with cells. Inside each cell, shadows seemed to writhe and shift, forming shapes that resembled faces screaming silently. He shivered but pressed on, drawn by a strange, pulsating light at the end of the hallway. At the last door, the light spilled out in a blinding glow. Ethan hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside, he found a room filled with mirrors, each reflecting not his image, but horrifying versions of himself. Eyes hollow, mouth stretched in silent screams, skin pale and cracked. From the mirrors, whispers emerged, calling his name, mocking him, promising that he would never leave. Suddenly, one mirror cracked violently, and a shadow lunged out, wrapping around his body with crushing force. Ethan fell to the floor, struggling as unseen hands dragged him toward the mirrors. He tried to scream, but his voice was swallowed by the darkness. Desperate, he remembered a prayer his grandmother taught him and recited it aloud, voice shaking. For a moment, the shadow recoiled, and the mirrors shattered into fragments. each piece showing fleeting glimpses of the horrors trapped within. When the storm ended and the sun rose, the townspeople found the asylum quiet and empty. Ethan was gone, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only muddy footprints that ended abruptly in the main hall. From that day on, locals claimed that on stormy nights, you could still hear his footsteps in the halls, followed by whispers calling your name, luring you into the asylum's endless nightmare. In a quiet village surrounded by dense woods, there was an old mansion that no one dared to approach. Its walls were cracked and covered in creeping ivy, and its windows were like dark, hollow eyes staring at anyone who passed by. Locals whispered that the mansion was cursed, haunted by the spirit of a man who had died there mysteriously decades ago. They said at night you could hear footsteps on the empty stairs, doors slamming on their own, and low whispers that seemed to call your name. One evening, a group of 4 friends, curious and fearless, decided to explore the mansion. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. The door slammed shut behind them, echoing like a gunshot. Shadows seemed to move along the walls, and distant whispers grew louder, repeating the friends' names over and over. They wandered through the long, narrow corridors until they reached a grand hall. In the center sat a large, ornate mirror. When one of them approached, the reflection in the mirror didn't match their movements. Instead, it showed twisted versions of themselves, eyes blackened, mouths stretched in silent screams. Suddenly, the reflection stepped out of the mirror and into the room, moving with unnatural speed. Panic set in. The friends ran through the mansion, but the hallways twisted and changed, never leading them to the exit. One by one, shadows grabbed them, dragging them into walls, floors, and ceilings as if the mansion itself was alive. Their screams echoed, but no one outside could hear them. The last remaining friend found a small, dusty book on a pedestal. He opened it and discovered it was a diary of the original owner, describing dark rituals to trap souls inside the mansion for eternity. Realizing the truth too late, he tried to flee, but the doors vanished, replaced by solid walls. The whispers turned into shrill screams, and shadows encircled him. When the villagers came the next morning, the mansion appeared silent and empty, as if untouched. But the diary had vanished, and the friend was never seen again. From that night on, anyone who dared walk near the mansion claimed they could see figures moving inside the windows and hear whispers inviting them to come closer, promising secrets and horrors no one could escape.